Hey, how's it going? My name is Louis or Abdul Alim or Sito or whatever you want to call me. Um, Wanted to speak about how divine God is. A perfect example of being able to understand how divine God is and how he humbles himself. You'd have to look at the sun and the sunrise, because the sunrise when the sunrise when the sun rises, I mean to say, when the sun rises, you'll be able to see the entire sun without it blinding you. And you got to pay attention to it. You got to keep looking at it. And as it rises, it gets stronger. As it gets higher, it gets stronger. But stay looking at it. You won't go blind. Believe me, you won't go blind. I mean, I do this a lot. So you won't go blind. All right? So I'm going to show you. Let me see if I could do this. No, that took a picture. All right, anyway. When it goes to its highest, your eyes will start to water. And when it waters, you'd have to picture. You have to think with an open mind. You have to think with an artistic mentality in order for you to understand this. Your eyes will start to water. So when you look at God, he's so glorious that your eyes start to water at how magnificent he is. And to let you know, you have to be motivated. What the opposite of God is, the devil. When you look at the devil, he's beautiful and everything, but your eyes start to water. God programmed that in everybody so that way they can understand how bad he fucked up. You just cry. And that's how the heavens treat the people on earth. They cry. That's why they have to be separated from us, because they're divine beings. And when you're that divine, you just cry at the sight of sin. So they have to be separated from us. But the time now is where we're uniting. God is letting the people from heavens visit us. And it's a time of the 144,000. They're being sought out by either evil and good. And I'm bearing witness to that. When I first started hearing these voices, I'd probably used maybe 50% of my intellect. As I started hearing these voices, or the voice of God, and the rest of the voices, I started noticing that I started getting smart, because they would always put me in different kinds of puzzle-like scenarios, using a huge portion of my mind and consciousness in order to understand and visualize, because it's all a mental thing. Now, you have to be strong. You got to get past the stages, because I didn't get to this stage through just ignoring these voices. I didn't get to this stage by community, because I didn't even know that other people had this. I started reading up about it, but I didn't know that other people had this. So I started using a huge portion of my brain, and I started understanding that in order to see how beautiful God is, you'd have to look for the brightest thing ever in the earth, which is the sun. or in your house. If you ever wanna, that's how God is present everywhere. You have to be able to look at the brightest thing that that exists around you, and that's like God's presence, because he's the brightest thing. Even in the darkest place, there is still a bright portion or some kind of brightness, whether it be in your mind, whether it be a physical brightness, whether it be a spiritual brightness. There's always a brightness, and that's the presence of God. So when these voices came to existence in my life, I started noticing that it's they're blocking my thoughts because they don't want y'all to know this. All right, so, well, anyway, try to finish that sentence that I was saying, because you have to be smart enough in order to break through the communication that they're trying to communicate with you, because these are the secrets of the world that everybody is knowing. I was a reviewer. I played video games. I did everything. I was a dental assistant. I was a criminal. I did all kinds of stuff. But this is different. Like, the level of understanding that I'm getting from these voices. I actually hear 6 different people. I went through gang stalking. I've went through, what else? We got V2K. Y'all call it V2K, but I call it the voice of God, because it's crazy how much they control. They control the movements, the thought patterns, like everything. It becomes, it at that point when they start controlling the entire world, it becomes a non-existence of a human being. They totally separate you and alienate you from the rest of the world, because they are directly speaking to you. So in order for you to understand what's going on, you have to be able to speak back into them. You have to do studies on psychology, social psychology, reverse psychology, any kind of psychology, because you have to be smart enough to communicate with these beings, whether they be human, whether they be spiritual, whether they be whatever it is. You have to be able to break the communication in order for them to stop doing what they're doing. You have to bring some kind of value to your life and let them know how much or important you are, because they are mapping out your brain in order to see how important you are. So if you don't see for yourself how important you are, then they'll destroy you, because they're testing you. All of it is just a test, and they don't care about your life, because the strong survive and the weak fall out. They're seeking out the 144,000. The things that they have spoken to me or just said anything is just beyond phenomenal. Like, they have showed me visions where I was like touching the face of God, like, all of these spiritual things, because you have to bring it to a place where you can understand the most. I can understand spiritual or religion a huge portion of my life. Now, whether it be music, whether it be the solar system, whatever it is that best interests you, bring that theme into the communication pattern that you can actually communicate with these beings with, because all they want to do is communicate with you, and they don't know how to communicate with you, and they feel as though they are divine beings and you are inferior. So if you are an inferior being, it is only natural, it is only in anything that is in existence other than God believes that there is an opposing side to themselves. And even to God it exists, because God has an opponent, which is the devil. So everything that is good, there is always some kind of evil. But just because there is some kind of evil doesn't necessarily mean that the good is weak. It just means that the good can't penetrate the evil, and the evil can't penetrate the good. But anything that surrounds this evil, because there is a greater good and there is a greater evil, so you have to understand that just like we revolve around the sun, evil has a gravity to it where it starts to pull like it starts to pull things around it. Now, just because it's pulling things around doesn't necessarily mean that it's only pulling evil things. Sometimes good things get caught up in the gravity of evil, which is why you got to separate yourself or find yourself in a place like heaven where you are totally separated from this greater evil. And in order for you to separate yourself from this greater evil, you have to understand that there is a greater good. Now, when you start to understand that there is a greater good, you start to open your mind to like, well, what is the greater good? And you start asking yourself questions like, man, is this something that I want to know? You know, because now that I know all of this stuff, I'm like, wow, do I really want to know? You know, because now it's like, how do I get to the greater good and the greater evil? For example, let's say I'm not a pagan, but I have to break this down in a metaphorical way so you can be able to understand what I'm saying 100%, because I don't want you to miss it. Even if you understand 95% of what I'm saying, you'll still miss exactly what I'm trying to say. And in order to understand God, you have to understand 100%. You have to be able to be smart. And this is what this is where I came into the understanding that what is it that you want out of life? You know, do you want success? Do you want money? You can get the things that you want, but you can't get understanding. You have to be able to have understanding. You have to be able to make your mind wiser. And these voices are capable of doing that if you're capable of breaking the barrier between the communications between this realm and whoever it is that's speaking to you, whether they be in an office, whether they be in heaven, whether they be in hell. You have to find out what is it that they're communicating and why they're communicating with you. What's that?